Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Heart Shaman podcast, where we talk about spiritual healing, shamanic wisdom, and the challenges of walking the healer's path. My name is Nadia Harenkiu, and today is episode number 41, God, Shamanism, and starting a church that doesn't fit the mold. Good morning, my podcast friends. We are doing another podcast on my early morning dog walk with Chad. However, I'm not going to use my headphones, so hopefully the quality of this recording will be much better. This podcast is coming on the heels of a very interesting week for me. So this week, I went to my first church since I was 14 years old, and I bought a Bible for the first time. Now, not because I believe in either of these things, but more for research purposes, for my own curiosity, because there are some things that keep coming up for me around religion and around God that I'm feeling really curious about, I guess is the best word. So today we are going to talk about shamanism, and we're going to talk about God. We're going to talk about shamanic training and everything in between. So if you haven't listened to my podcast yet about shamanic training, I recorded one probably in late 2024. I did my first training. I called it a primordial shamanic immersion last year. And that training was awesome. It was awesome. It was such a great learning experience for me and all the people involved. And it was also extremely challenging for all of us as well. I started out with a relatively large group of people, and because the intensity was so high, because the depth was so deep, many of them were not able to complete the training. Now, I was pretty upfront when I offered this training that it wasn't really training. You can't train someone to be a shaman. You can't even train someone to really practice shamanism. It's kind of inherent gifts that you either have or you don't. And especially when a lot of people come to these trainings with the idea that they're going to go ahead and turn around to use these skills to help other people, I think that's often a misunderstanding, because most people need these skills for themselves, not just for facilitating for others. And when we jump right into facilitating for others, we bypass a lot of our own stuff, which makes it harder to get into shamanic practice. So you guys know that I identify with the word shaman to some degree. A lot of my practice can be considered shamanism, and that's only because I don't have a better word for it. And that's kind of what's been coming up for me this last week as I consider hosting my second shamanic training. So let me go back to the Bible. I purchased my first Bible last week, and it was because a client of mine who I really love and have grown very close with is always comparing things that I say and I do and what I do to things that are said in the Bible, or the energy of Jesus, or Sacred Heart. We have many conversations that leave me feeling very open, very excited, very curious about this connection. Now, I was not raised with religion, and I think the last time I went to church, I was 14. I think it was a Catholic Mass on Christmas. I'm not really sure. I don't remember much because it wasn't about church. It was about spending time with my mom. And so that's the extent of my experience with organized religion, other than all of the trauma work that I do with other people who have been in horrible religious situations. So I ended up buying a copy of the Bible, and even just reading the first page, it's like, I know this. This is exactly what God shows me directly, all the time. And I can probably put it in better words. And specifically, I'm referring to just the simple separation of light and dark, and calling it day and night. And that was the first day. Now, to me, reading this passage, which I think was Genesis, written allegedly by Moses, who was a prophet, reading this first passage was like, well, yeah, obviously. Doesn't everybody know that when you separate light and dark. You create linear time. You create a literal separation from the infinite that is the space of God, the space of shamans. And no, the answer is no. People don't know, and they don't understand, and they don't have lived experience of this because they're relying on the Bible. They're relying on story. They're relying on pastors and priests and people to interpret and hold their hand through this exploration. And then it occurred to me that I teach people how to connect directly. That I say connect to the spirit world, connect to the divine, but what I mean is connect to God. And I've been really hesitant to use that word because I don't have a foundation for God. I don't have background to even know what that means, and I feel like a fraud. This is hilarious, right? I feel like a fraud saying I talk to God, because who am I? I don't even know how to talk to God. I didn't even go to church. Nobody showed me. Nobody told me. It doesn't matter. I still do. And I've been fighting using the word. I've been fighting being upfront and transparent, and even being able to name what it is that I do and who it is that I am. So I'm several pages in because these things take time to digest. And I started reading about Adam and Eve, and immediately my heart closes. And I know that this is not truth. The way that it is conveyed, the way that it is written, is not what is meant. And that is one of my many beautiful gifts, is the ability to feel truth and falsehood. A blessing and a curse, for sure. But in this case, it provides for interesting lens for me to view the Bible. So I'm having this experience this week. And then Saturday, 2 days ago, I went to a Pride festival with my 14-year-old. So for those of you who don't know, I have a 14-year-old transhuman, non-binary human, who's just like the light of my life. He's amazing. And we attended a Pride event in St. Pete a couple weeks ago, Florida. And it was the most like unhinged, amazing event we've ever been to. It was so much fun. There was so much security. It was really interesting. But we had a blast. We're like, okay, Florida's down with it. We love this. And we decided to go to an event in Lecanto, which is rural Central Florida. Like, when you think about Florida man, when you think about backcountry Florida, this area is it for sure. And I thought it would be great to go to a Pride festival, to go meet the community. I'd never been to a Unity church. I've always wanted to. And it was the most beautiful, tender, sweet experience I could have possibly imagined. There were so many people there who just wanted to show their support to the LGBTQ community. The crowd was like 50 and up. I gotta say, my kid was the only kid there, which was really funny. But it was a lot of welcoming, sitting, listening, being present with, openly saying like, hey, we're here to support you. Were there police at this one too? For sure. But they were eating and mingling. They weren't guarding the doors. There were like 150 people there. Now, that is not what you think of when you think of rural Florida. It's not what I thought of. And my kiddo was also quite surprised, pleasantly so. And as I'm sitting there during this festival, I'm having the same feelings that I had when I had my community in Washington, Portland area. I had a nonprofit, well, I still have a nonprofit, I guess, but a group of like-minded people. I hosted 4 to 5 events per month, gathering these people, and the foundation of the group was shamanism. And you can imagine that the people who showed up included a wide range of individuals, but the feeling was always the same. What I often saw when I look around in my own meetup group was outcasts. It was people who had nowhere else to go. It was people who felt discarded by God, whether they knew it or not. It was the people who were unwanted, or who felt they were unwanted. Now, I see this in every person I work with. This is very deeply connected to the shadow, but on a community level, it's a bit different. It's like being able to look around in a community and see that everybody has the same socks on. There is a commonality here. And the commonality of people who go to church is the desire for connection with divine. And in some churches, the second commonality is I don't fit anywhere else, but I know that I need this connection. So this Unity Church was adorable and still very much Christian, right? A lot more relaxed, a lot more open. Definitely something I would recommend or get behind for someone who is seeking a more organized religion. What do I mean when I say organized? A lot of structure, a lot of boxes, a lot of rights and wrongs, or maybe not. But structure means structure. You know, by definition, you know what structure is. So I'm sitting with this experience for a couple days, and I'm trying to put it together with everything else that I'm going through, everything else that I've experienced over the last 6 months, couple years. And I know that I need to start a church. And then I remember that I have a church. And I'm like, wait a second, this church needs to look different from other churches, which already puts me in a weird position. How do you pitch this kind of church? How do you get support? How do you get people to show up? How do you get other people to facilitate? Because it really can't be run by one person. But we have this idea, especially with shamanism, like, oh, the shaman's in charge. The shaman runs the thing. And that was what burnt me out on community work, is that I was the only one. When I finally found other practitioners who were able to host some events, who were able to share their gifts, it was time for me to leave. Which was great. Ultimately, right? That's what we want, is a place where people can go to get healing and non-religious worship through multiple conduits, multiple facilitators, multiple options. You want to do the Bible? That's great. You want to play with tarot? Amazing. Tobacco, plant medicine, body movement? Awesome. Sauna. Chanting. All those things are great, and all of those things connect you to God. Why aren't they all in one place under the umbrella of a church? Because starting and running a church is hard, guys. And I'm hoping that the next iteration of it will be easier. But let me tell you what else is coming up. We're going to talk about my shamanic training in a second. First, we're going to talk about God. God before organized religion was largely polytheistic, right? Is that the word? Many gods. Everything has a god. The rain, the ground, the animals, the trees, the plants. They may even have individual gods that represent all the daisies in the world. I actually don't know. And then, at some point, someone, I'm not going to go too deep down that hole, decided that the only way to talk to God was to be in a church, was to do it through a priest, was to do it in a specific location. Let's take all that power that's spread out everywhere, very feminine version of God and spirituality, very unlimited version, very big version, and make it very small. You can only connect to God when you're in the church. You're not allowed to do any kind of worship outside. You're not allowed to have altars. You're not allowed to have ceremonies. You're not allowed to drum. You're not allowed to own a drum, or you could go to jail. All over the world, there has been restriction on connecting to God in a way other than organized religion. Right, I think it was in the 80s or 90s, it was no longer illegal to own a hoop drum in Russia. They banned drums. Guys, what? Did you know that tribes in the United States, up until I think like the 70s, were still being ransacked by the FBI. If anybody heard them drumming, singing, they would confiscate everything in their house. They would send people to jail. Indigenous people weren't allowed to practice their medicine. The original medicine, the original connection to God. When I go to Europe, I can see that most of the magic there has been moved to the other world. People are not connected to it, but it is right there. The veil is so thin. And they keep it alive through their stories and their practices, but they don't openly talk about it. It's completely suppressed. Now, this is the church that I want. This is the church that we all deserve. It's the church that teaches us how to connect to God through everything. Literally everything. And to use the tools that suit us best, that feel best for us. Is it prayer? Is it nature? Is it a drum? Tarot cards? Where do we go to learn that, other than to pay ridiculous amounts of money for teachers to train us? Or we can learn some of the older, purer energy through organized religion, but only if we sip it through this tiny straw. We need something more, and I think that we're all ready for it. It's just about building it and figuring out what that is. How does it need to look? What is required? What do you do when you don't fit the mold or the boxes that are already created? Right? My church is a shamanic church, which I'm super cool with. But how do I train other people? How do I ordain them? What is my sacred text? It's not a black and white conversation, and the government makes that very clear. They make it clear, and they also make it so hard to bring it to the world. My 501c3 application, my state business applications, my work with the DEA, so challenging. Because this religion, if you want to call it a religion, is not something that fits into any of the boxes. And it takes time to build, to understand, to put into the right words. And I really felt strongly about having a 501c3 because I want grants. I want big donations. I want people who have been through some shit where they're like, man, I wish I had a shaman. I wish I had a medicine person who helped me through that. Or maybe they found one and now they want to make sure other people can too. So here we are, church and God and all that. And I'm in the process of building my next shamanic training. My primordial shamanism immersion is what I called it last year. And every time I try to do this, it just doesn't fit. It doesn't feel right. I don't want to train shamans. I can't. I don't have a lineage. I can't even really call anybody shamans without pissing somebody off. And you can't do this work with the intention of solely bringing it to other people. It requires that you bring it to yourself first. And so it leaves me in a weird spot with regards to allowing people to sign up for my training, quote unquote training. And it occurred to me this morning in the early twilight hours between sleep and wake that that's not what I do. I don't train people in shamanism. I teach people how to connect with God. I teach people the old ways, the ways that were banished or outlawed or forgotten or twisted in an effort to control the power, to control how God looks and how God comes through, probably for some money. I'm not really sure. It's indigenous religion. It's original shamanism. It's the connection that's here before people mess it all up and get in the way. It's the connection we all have. We just don't know how to use. So the next question is, what do we even call such a thing? I don't want you to come to church and see me every Sunday. I want every day to be church for you. I want your life to be ceremony, and I want you to go out and create community that fits for you, because we all need to be creating community, not the one shaman or the one medicine person who lives in town. It's all of our responsibilities. Do I want a location? Absolutely. Do I want to do cool things like mental health care for those who haven't been helped by the system, or monthly ceremonies? Heck yeah, I do. But I don't want to be that thing that people rely on for their connection to God. That's not what I want. And I don't think that anybody else wants it either, because religion hasn't done us any good. So I don't know if I'm going to be changing my training program in terms of like names. What do I call it? But it doesn't matter. I'm going to be offering a program teaching you how to connect God directly through the plants and the land and the animals and the ancestors and the dead. I'm going to be teaching the old ways. Not in a new agey kind of way, not in a religious or tradition kind of way, in the primordial, who created Earth and why it was created. Working with the spirit of the planet, not in a woo-woo kind of way, in a super grounded, super present kind of way. In fact, if you're super woo-woo and very we'll call it quote unquote airy-fairy, this work's not for you. It's not, because those people cannot ground in. They cannot be fully present in the 3D and also the astral. And you must have both to connect to God, because God is all around us. And also inside you, and inside me, and inside the person that you hate, and the person that abused you, and also inside Donald Trump. God is everywhere. So I cannot promise to train anybody to be anything, but I can promise to guide you to actual love, to your heart, to true connection, to God in the much bigger sense of the word, not world, or both maybe. How to work with the shadow and how to work with the light and how to bring them together, because that's where they belong. Now I'm going to be announcing this next class, training, I don't really know what you want to call it, in the next couple weeks or month. It's going to be hybrid. I'm going to open up the class this spring, or not the spring, the fall. We'll have an in-person meeting, probably a weekend or such, do some hands-on work, some practicing, some establishing rapport. The rest of the training will be virtual in a mix of live lecture, pre-recorded content, live coaching individually or as a group. I haven't really decided yet. And a closing ceremony for those who are interested. For those who want the initiation experience, which is a totally separate but equally awesome thing. Or just to close out the container in a nice solid way. Now this training is not going to cost what shamanic trainings cost. It's not going to be $10,000. It's going to be sliding scale. Because I'll be real with you, the people who have gotten the most out of my work didn't have the money to pay me at the time. But they sure made up for it afterwards. Or we traded epic things. So if you're interested in the work I talk about, in the things that I discuss, in me, in this concept that I'm describing to you today, head over to my website, sacredheartshaman.com. Look for the primordial shamanism training. Put in an application. Tell me about yourself. Make the connection. And I'll reach out to you and we'll have a powwow and we'll talk about it and we'll see what feels good. I think that's all for my morning dog walk ramble today. I greatly appreciate this podcast. I appreciate everyone who takes the time to listen and share and give it a review. I appreciate you all, and I will see you again soon. Thank you. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to know more about me and my work, you can find me at www.sacredheartshaman.com.